Hi, my name is Brandon Miller, and today I'm going to be interviewing Eric Searfoss Miller on his deck tech of this wonderful, wonderful thing that you have created.
I'm really excited because I'm excited to be on this side of the table right here. This is gonna be great.
So, you have decided to build goblins.
Yes,
How
modern
long-
goblins.
And how long have you really been playing this?
I've been probably playing some variation of this list for maybe 3 to 4 years. I kind of threw it together back in Return to Ravnica. We had a lot of good goblins come out, and I decided, let's throw a goblins deck together. And then Modern kind of rolled around as a format. I'm like, hey, I already have most of these cards. Let's do it. This deck's had a lot of revision since then. Zendikar came. We had all sorts of cool stuff in there happen. We had M15. Even Kaladesh block contributed to this deck. So there's been a lot of revision. A lot of things have happened to it, and I really like it.
And so, as we are going to see in a very few short seconds, this has been something that you've been working on for quite a while and something that you're just absolutely 100% comfortable with.
Yeah, I like to joke that I've been casting lightning bolts longer than most of my opponents have been alive, and it holds true in this pile of Magic cards I have right here.
Okay, so let's take a look at this deck.
Absolutely.
Oh boy. Things you have done to this deck.
So yeah, something that you're noticing right now if you're looking at the camera, I've made a few alterations. We have gold borders here on the Goblin Guides. These grenades are affectionately referred to as zebra bordered.
Oh my goodness.
We have these lightning bolts. These are gold bordered, signed, revised lightning bolts. And then these are silver border Cavern of Souls and silver bordered unglued mountains, and a red bordered Tormod script.
Whew, boy, that was painful to hear.
I love my deck.
I can tell. There's quite a few languages that are different, editions that are different.
I try to get things signed as much as possible, and I try to just make my deck look fun for me.
All right. And unfortunately, it is most often an eyesore to your opponents. All right, so let's start off with the basics. The creatures, they're all goblins.
Yeah.
So we have Goblin Guide, Foundry Street Zenizen, Legion Loyalists, and Monk Fanatic, and the Whackers as your one drops.
Yes. So all my turn one plays are pretty basic. We have the Goblin Guide, is basically every mono red deck's turn one, go, hit you with damage, have fun. Mog Fanatic is one card that not a lot of the Goblin lists are playing, but I really like it. I feel like there's a lot of dudes that are in like the X1 or X2 range where you can just surprise kill them with a Fanatic, where they're holding up a negate for a lightning bolt or some sort of like spell pierce. You can just, all right, I've done one damage to your guy, Fanatic, finish it off. Also, sometimes it can just get in for that last point of damage. Foundry Street Denizen, pretty bread and butter, nothing really interesting going on there. It gets bigger every time you play a red creature until end of turn. Legion Loyalist constantly overperforms because it just has so much text. The Battalion trigger makes it have first strike, trample, and cannot be blocked by tokens. And there are a non-trivial amount of times where I've slammed down a Legion Loyalist, and my opponent thought he was perfectly safe behind his 4 Lingering Souls tokens, and then he all of a sudden wasn't. Bushwhacker is a one drop in the sense that sometimes I am just in the position where I want to cast one for one. But it's secretly a 2-drop with the kicker. You'll hear goblins often referred to as 8-whack. where you have the Bushwhackers, where they all have some sort of effect that gives your entire team a +1/+0 buff and haste. This deck, as you can see, only runs 4 Bushwhackers. I feel like Reckless Bushwhacker, the second playset that most people run, isn't as good in most situations. If it's the only card in your hand when you top deck it, it is a 3 mana 2/1 with haste, vanilla. It does it's a French vanilla creature. It doesn't do anything. Sure, it might finish out a game, but it's a lot less useful than other cards that I finished out playsets of, or some of this spicy technology we have over here.
All right, and I see for your 2 drops, we have Mog, War Marshal, and Goblin Pile Driver.
Yep, War Marshal, again, bread and butter. It's very simple, very useful. I think that more people should pay the echo cost on it. So often I see people just ignore the echo cost while their opponent's holding up removal, and then that Mog War Marshal token that leaves, when it enters or leaves, it generates a 1/1 goblin, and you can pay echo to keep it out. Otherwise, it's sacrificed at the beginning of your next turn. But people won't pay that cost when your opponent's obviously sitting with removal up. So forcing your opponent to use that card gives you an advantage in creatures, especially against decks like Jund, who specialize in 1v1 removal. It's a very, very versatile card that doesn't see enough usage, in my opinion. Pile Driver, again, very powerful card. Most 8-whack lists are running like a 2-2 split. I have them all in my main deck because this plus Legion Loyalist is disgusting. Turning a Pile Driver into like a 7/2 first strike trample creature is just one of the best feelings I've had in a long time. Go ahead.
And Standard All-Star, Rabble Master.
Goblin Rabble Master, John Rabbleman himself. I love this guy. When M15 first came out, I bought something along the lines of 20 of the Buy a Box promo Rabble Masters, because people would just throw them in as a freebie on trades, and they didn't value him at all. And all of a sudden he became a $25 card. And so I'm sitting there with a ton of copies, and I'm like, I love this card. I've loved this card since I saw it the first time. And it just excites me. It's a 1-card army in a can, and it's incredible. Rabble Master plus Pile Driver, everything combos with Pile Driver. I don't understand. Why are you not running 4 Pile Drivers in your deck? It's so good.
And the latest edition from Kaladesh, Smuggler's Copter.
Smuggler's Copter, I love. So, I mean, this is what I thought, all right? Follow my train of thought. It's banned in Standard. So it's got to be good. It actually does. So it's actually really fun because it has synergies with basically everything. Mm-hmm. All of the creatures that don't have haste naturally, all of a sudden are now a 3/3 flyer. Goblin Rabble Master makes a token. If my 1/1 Goblin wasn't going to go anywhere, all of a sudden, it's a Smuggler's Copter. It lets me thin through my deck, filter out cards I want, filter out cards I don't want. And honestly, that's one of Goblin's biggest problems, is its card selection and card advantage. Because 9 times out of 10, you're not drawing extra cards. You don't have a lot of selection, so being able to loot on attack and defense is an incredible ability for a Goblin's deck to have, because having that extra bit of selection is extraordinarily powerful.
All right. And now we move over to the spells. Mm-hmm. Lightning Bolt, you're running a red deck, auto include.
I'm running, yeah. There are very few red decks that don't run lightning bolts. There's 1 or 2 that I can think of off the top of my head, but they're legacy decks or combo decks. Storm technically is a red deck that doesn't run lightning bolts. I think some running them in the side, but I don't personally when I play Storm. And then the weird mono, basically any Storm variant doesn't really run them.
Storm is basically a boiling blue deck.
Mm-hmm.
And then Goblin Grenade, which are just bigger bolts.
Goblin Grenade's one of those cards that the existence of that card in your deck is way more important than casting the spell. Because having Goblin Grenades, and even in games like 2 and 3, it's one of the first cards I sideboard out. Almost all the time. Because having it in the 75 makes most opponents play extremely conservatively, and that makes it much easier to plow through what you're trying to do. Because if they're not applying their game plan, you're able to apply yours more aggressively. Mm-hmm. But they'll sit there, like, sitting behind 10 life, and they're like, am I just dead? Yes, but not the way you think you are.
And a one of Stoke the Flames.
So, Stoke the Flames is really cool, because a lot of these, again, creatures that don't do anything when they come in, these non-haste creatures, I can use them to cast this Stoke the Flames, which sometimes just kills someone.
Mm-hmm.
I
also
love
talk about M15 Superstar.
Oh, it was such a good card in that standard format. I loved it so much.
This is when I started playing Magic, and these two cards are definitely cards that I abuse a lot of.
I love those cards. They're so good.
All right. Moving on to mana.
There's not a lot of it.
Question.
Answer.
Why?
Well, so one of the things, I have probably played this deck on and off for like 5 years. I've had this deck consistently for 3. The problem is, every time I put it together, I would sell the expensive parts to build another deck. And so all of a sudden, I'm like, you know what? I'm not doing that anymore. So I gold bordered my guides and I silver bordered my caverns, so they were literally unsellable. This caused a weird conundrum because now people wanted them more. But
And
yeah, so I've had these 3 for a while. I picked up my 4th one only after they became $100.
And the same with the Silver Border Unstable Mountain.
That's just because they're an uncard. They have to be returned to their proper natural state.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And also 4 Simian Spirit Guides.
Yes. So I really like my Simian Spirit Guides. I literally this deck was originally running 16 and 3. I literally just took out 4 mountains for 4 Spirit Guides because you can have some obnoxiously explosive turn 1s here. Turn 1 Pow Driver into a turn 2 double guide.
Yeah,
Your opponent is dead.
Yeah.
They like, if they'd go like turn 1, here's my Celestial Colonnade, they just died. that opponent has now deceased. You're in game 2. And it's great.
All right. Moving on to the sideboard.
Yes.
There is an interesting card that I want to point out.
Yep.
Well, we have the 3 Smasher Smithereens.
It's pretty
artifact.
boilerplate, yeah.
Here's the interesting card, Gear for Ori.
Let me tell you about Gear for Ori. So it's a 4-mana artifact. Each player may play an additional land on each of their turns. But if a player at the end of their turn has 0 cards, they draw. Or is it the beginning or is it the
I believe
end?
it's the beginning of upkeep.
The beginning of each player's upkeep. I lied. I don't know what my card does. I don't get to resolve it very often. If that player has no cards in hand, they draw 3 cards. So this card is in here for 2 reasons. 1, no one knows what it does. So a lot of times they'll read the first line of text and let it resolve. And then 2, against control decks, this is just absolutely bonkers. If I'm able to sneak this in, my hand is almost always empty. And because my hand is almost always empty, I'm always drawing 4 cards a turn.
All right.
It is overperformed when it resolves, but 9 times out of 10, it just eats a counterspell. Which is honestly what I want out of a card like this anyway.
All right. 2 Anger of the Gods. What would you bring that in against?
Dredge. Sometimes the Hollow One deck goes really wide, but like it does, I don't know. Other decks that are trying to go wide, I guess.
Okay.
But mostly, like that and the Tormod's Crypts are my concession to the fact that Dredge is extremely popular in the local meta and in general. It's a powerful deck, and it's slightly faster than what I'm doing.
Okay. Why 1 red Tormod's Crypt?
Because I just bought these 2.
Oh, boy.
So the Red Tormod's Crypt has a cool story behind it, actually. When I first became a judge, there was a judge whose name escapes me. I want to say Ashley, who took a lot of white bordered cards that she had weird judge rulings on, and she red bordered them. And the red bordered cards in her commander deck were just her way of being like, oh, this has a weird ruling attached to it. But then she just started red bordering a bunch of cards. And I got this off of her back in, I want to say 2012. And I've just used it ever since. And these two I just picked up literally today.
All right, and the last couple of cards, extra burn spells, Fork Bolt, and Exquisite Firecraft.
So Exquisite Firecraft is kind of my concession to control decks being pretty good. Control, I basically bring in the Oris and the Firecraft, and these deck cards help me shore up that matchup. Forked Bolt, I bring in against other tribal decks. Or if I absolutely have to kill like Lingering Souls tokens and they've gotten rid of my loyalists. Or I just shock them in the face. Honestly, Forked Bolt is one of those cards that was main deck for a very long time and only moved over to the sideboard when fewer X1 creatures existed that I could deal with in the format.
All right. Moving on.
Mm-hmm.
You obviously have played this deck and you're very knowledgeable about it.
Yeah.
Very dedicated to the point where you have definitely taken it with some arts and crafts, I might add. Any closing statements you have about the deck?
So a lot of times I will bring this, if I'm ever playing Modern at a competitive level, I will bring this 75. More or less. Like the sideboard might get tweaked, but this 60 is something that I've forged over many years, and I will swear by this pile. You can see it's got several top 8 IQ finishes. I bring it to basically every PPTQ. It either wins really fast or it loses really fast. Either way, I have downtime, and that's what's important to me at these big events.
Always time for lunch.
Yep.
Well, I believe everything that could have been said about this magical pile has been said. Thank you for your time.
Yep.
My name is Brandon Miller.
And I'm Eric Sirifos Miller.
And we will see you on the next one.